The revelations of sexual abuse by Jimmy Savile we've heard so far, and that are still coming into the police, are awful. As the Director General of the BBC, I have made clear my revulsion at the thought that these criminal assaults were carried out by someone employed by the BBC, and that some may have happened on BBC premises, as well as, we now discover, in hospitals and other institutions across the UK. So before I explain how we will examine every aspect of this series of events, I have one thing to repeat. That is a profound and heartfelt apology on behalf of the BBC to every victim. It is the victims, these women who were subject to criminal actions, who must be central in our thoughts. And it is the fundamentally criminal nature of many of these allegations that has made supporting the police my first priority. But the BBC will not avoid confronting the events of its past, to understand what happened and to try to ensure that nothing of this kind can happen ever again at the BBC. We are today announcing two pieces of work, both to be led by independent figures with the ability to command respect for their insight and judgment. I'm not able to announce these names today, but I can confirm we are already talking to them, and I will announce the names as soon as possible. There will be two independent reviews commissioned by the BBC's Executive Board, chaired for the purpose of these reviews by our non-executive director, Dame Fiona Reynolds. Despite our efforts to make clear our belief that the decision to drop the Newsnight investigation was taken properly, for sound editorial reasons, people have continued to speculate. This is damaging to the BBC and is a cloud of suspicion which cannot be allowed to continue. The BBC Executive Board and I have, therefore, ordered an immediate independent inquiry led by an external expert into whether there were any failings in the BBC management of the Newsnight investigation. The Executive Board has also set up an inquiry, once the police have indicated they are happy for it to proceed, into the culture and practices of the BBC during the years that Jimmy Savile worked here and afterwards. It will examine whether that culture and those practices allowed him or others to carry out the sexual abuse of children. It will also examine whether the BBC's child protection, whistleblowing, and bullying and harassment policies and practices are now fit for purpose, and whether there are any lessons from the illegal activities of Jimmy Savile or others for the BBC today in its operation of these policies and practices. We will, of course, share any lessons with all interested parties. The independent chair of this review will be assisted by an expert in the safeguarding of children. Again, we will announce the name of the chair as soon as possible. Both of these reviews have been agreed with the BBC Trust, and appropriate procedures will be put in place to manage any potential conflicts of interest with executive directors. Both reviews will report through to the Executive Board and the Trust, and they will both be published. These will be forensic, but also soul-searching examinations. Our audience's trust in us is paramount. We will do everything in our power to maintain that trust, and we will do that by holding ourselves to account fully and openly, as we have always done, and as our audiences expect. Next week, I will have news about how we will deal with allegations of sexual harassment. I will give you more details of this as soon as I have them. I remain confident that our existing policies are working effectively to deal with any such problems today. Jimmy Savile's victims have faced years of pain. We owe it to them and to our audiences to understand how this could have happened and to make sure that everything we do ensures that nothing like this could ever happen again. So now I'd like to take some questions.
Can I take questions? So we'll start with Sky, please.
Mr. Entwistle, Alistair Bunk from Sky News. On Friday last week, you said there would be no internal investigation. Now you're announcing 2 internal reviews. Is it not the case that the BBC's response has actually been dictated by the revelations rather than the corporation grasping it from the word go? And you talk about audience trust. Has that not jeopardised audience trust in the BBC?
The way we approached this from the days before the ITV investigation was broadcast was to, when the scale of the allegations became apparent, was to recognise first and foremost the criminal nature of the vast majority of the allegations that were being made. And the first thing that struck us was the critical need to find a way of collaborating with the police on addressing those allegations. Now, that's something I did personally. I spoke to the police on a number of occasions on the Tuesday before the ITV broadcast was made, and over the following days, I established with them a system inside the BBC and in our relationship with the police to ensure that nothing we did, nothing we thought of doing, could get in the way of criminal investigations. Now, this was something the police specifically asked me to do. 2 different police forces and agencies, one force and one agency, made it clear to me that the biggest risk in the first week of our handling this was that we would begin something that would damage their capacity to carry out what could turn out to be live, active criminal investigations. So my priority initially was to ensure that nothing of that kind happened. Now, we worked on that over the first week. Then we started to consider what the rest of our approach should be. And that has led us, after careful consideration, to the 2 reviews I've announced today.
Okay, can we go to ITV?
Lucy Manning from ITV News.
Hello, Lucy. Nice to see you not rushing up my street.
Yes, slightly more formal, I think, but we were trying to get you all week, so we thought it was possibly best to...
You did get me.
We did. Mr. Entwistle, if I can ask you, yesterday you did say that you didn't know the nature of the Newsnight allegations when the tribute programmes to Jimmy Savile went ahead. Did you know it was an investigation into criminal behaviour by Jimmy Savile, an investigation into potential child abuse by Jimmy Savile, an investigation into action on BBC premises? What did you know?
No, I didn't know any of those things. What I knew was that Newsnight was looking at Jimmy Savile. That's as much as I was told. Now, I know there's been a certain amount of mystification in the press about this, so can I explain what was in my mind? I'm a former editor of Newsnight, and one of the absolute priorities for BBC journalists investigating something that might touch upon the BBC is the independence of the news and current affairs. It's the news division, but current affairs sits inside it. The independence of the news division from any potential influence elsewhere in the organisation. So the thing that was uppermost in my mind was an absolute determination to ensure that nobody should construe anything I had to say or think about this as a matter of any pressure. So Helen said to me, we're looking into Jimmy Savile, and I said, thanks for letting me know. I hope you'll keep me updated.
And you still thought it was right to run those programmes even though they were looking into Jimmy Savile?
Yes, because I didn't know what aspect of Jimmy Savile they were looking into, and I think the other important thing to say is I had no idea of the strength of any information they might have or allegations they were dealing with. I mean, the thing about journalists, as you'll know, is that they look into a lot of things, and things don't always stand up. Things aren't always what they seem to be. Things have to be checked very carefully before they're taken seriously. I'm sure you're not the only journalist who's had a claim made to her that turned out subsequently simply not to be true. Now, all of those things are potentially in one's mind when one thinks that somebody's looking into something. The key thing for me was to be absolutely clear about not being in a position of looking in any sense as if I was trying to put any pressure on a proper BBC News investigation.
Nick Hyam, BBC News. Nick Hyam, BBC News. Ken Macquarie of BBC Scotland has today talked to the Newsnight journalists, the Newsnight team. Have you spoken to him since, and what did he tell you about what he's discovered?
So, Nick, that's not true. So you better check that and perhaps reform the question in the light of what really happened.
Okay, can we go to Channel
Jonathan Rugman from Channel 4 News. Should the editor of Newsnight not at the very least be suspended, given that you have just said that an independent investigation is being carried out into the management of the Newsnight investigation? And secondly, should you not have asked a lot more questions about that Newsnight investigation, given you were about to broadcast a tribute? You didn't ask enough questions by the sound of it.
I've explained, Jonathan, why I would not have asked questions in that situation. I was the director of Vision, the director of the television department of the BBC. I have no influence or authority over investigations carried out by BBC News. And it's very important that I always behave in a manner which absolutely bears out that lack of authority or responsibility.
Who should have asked the questions of Newsnight?
If there were questions to be asked, the nature of the review I've set up will reveal them.
And what about the suspension of the Newsnight editor? Sorry, you haven't answered that question.
No, I don't think it would be appropriate to suspend the Newsnight editor.
Why?
Well, because I have confidence in Peter Rippon. He's a very good editor indeed. As I've explained to you, we've spent the last 2 weeks trying to get people to understand and recognise our account of events, which I stand by. What we're doing now is we've set up an independent inquiry because, in the end, accountability, transparency, honesty, these are the things we want to live by and be judged by. We recognise that we need that to answer the questions that are being asked.
Dan Savile with The Guardian. You've already asked a question that I was going to ask about whether you had confidence in Peter Rippon, but just following on from that, do you have confidence in the public statements Peter Rippon's made over the last couple of weeks? And in particular, are you confident that in that Newsnight film there was no material relevant or useful to the police that the BBC sat on by killing that film? There are certainly journalists involved with that who indicate that there was relevant material, but Peter Rippon said otherwise in his statement.
These questions, Dan, these issues are exactly what I want the independent inquiry to look at. I don't want to prejudge it on anything you've asked me there.
So you don't know?
Two more questions. We've got one from Lee here.
Lee Homeward from the Sun newspaper. Lord Patten said this week that he'd expect resignations from senior BBC executives, including yourself, if any impropriety is found to have happened from this independent review. Will you resign if you're found guilty of anything, and will you expect resignations from any of your senior managers if they are? Again, I don't want in any sense to prejudge what the people leading these reviews will do and how they'll approach it. The watchwords here, as I've said, accountability, transparency, honesty. They need to be allowed to do their work now, to get on with their work, not influenced by inappropriate statements from me or anybody else. And when they've finished their work, those reports will go to the executive board of the BBC, chaired by Dame Fiona Reynolds in this instance, thence to the trust, and if any action needs to be taken, that will be the moment to work out what that action should be, not before. No intention of prejudging it before that. Go as far as resignations? I have no comment to make on that statement. I'm not prejudging it in any sense.
Okay, final question.
Paul Cahalan from The Independent on Sunday. Could you now show the original Newsnight footage and let the public make up their mind as to whether an investigation, whether it should have been shown in its entirety? The allegation is that you had enough to run with as a story.
Again, I don't know whether that's true or not because I've not looked. I don't know in detail what Newsnight had. I do know that there isn't a film. There was a lot of talk about why can't Newsnight run the film. Well, there isn't a film. And I also know that although a number of potential witnesses were spoken to, I understand only one of those witnesses is on film. The first step, the key step with the Newsnight material is to make sure that the police have a proper look at it and are allowed to form a view about anything in there. Once that's done, I'll be prepared to think about it again.
But you had a transmission date. Sorry, can I just follow up? You had a transmission date to run the programme that signifies it was near completion.
Newsnight has transmission dates at 10:30 every night to run things that haven't even been started at 9 o'clock that night. I don't think you should read anything into that. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.